you guys cooler prizes and better sponsors and help you guys get jobs. So real quick, this is Professor Daniel Krutz. For those of you who don't know, today we're going to be doing Android security here at RC3, but he's a professor here in the SC department, and he just did a thing with Wick this past week on doing Android security, and he has a cool little fun project that some of you guys can get involved with, so I'm going to let him take it away.
So I don't think I've had the opportunity to meet most of you. So my name is Dan Krutz. I'm in the software engineering department, and one project I'm working on is an Android security project with its goal is to teach folks how to create secure Android software, and really it's going to branch out to secure mobile software. So what the idea is for my project is that I'm creating educational modules where a student, a developer, or anybody else that wanted to learn about mobile security could pick up any of the modules that are created. It'll have some background on the vulnerability. It will have an example vulnerable application. It'll have steps to exploit that vulnerability. It'll have instructions how to repair the vulnerability. So like a step-by-step guide of actually repairing the vulnerability, steps that you show that the vulnerability has been repaired, and some more background on actual vulnerability. So some of the initial modules I've created are available at my project website. So I'm able to move the mouse. There we go. So right now I have 10 modules I've created. Actually, I shouldn't say I've created them. I had a student create them for me. And so what you could do is hopefully I can drive looking at the other screen. So I think this is the set of activities. So I'm a loud mouth, so I don't need the microphone. So these, I think, 10 activities I've created. They range from beginner level activities, so they're more like Hello World style vulnerabilities. So the initial vulnerabilities I created are activities access vulnerabilities, intent protection vulnerabilities, and some XML vulnerabilities. And then they range down to medium advanced vulnerabilities. So the idea is that beginner level vulnerabilities, anybody that really didn't even know about Android development or mobile development could pick those activities up and they could go and start learning about security. And hopefully see that security is cool, is something that everybody can do. It's not locked up to quote the experts. It's just something that's fun for everyone to do. And then as you go down, some of the advanced activities, they're geared more towards people that maybe have been doing Android development, or they're pretty familiar with Android development or security. They've been doing it for a couple years. I was very lucky, the person who created these activities, they have like a couple million downloads on the Google Play Store. So they're pretty good with Android. So the activities I think are pretty good. What I'm looking for is help from you folks. So if you're interested in getting involved in this project, it's really complicated to get involved. All you need to do is either take one of these activities, maybe go through, change some of the grammar in it, maybe if there's some small updates that should be made to the instructions, go ahead and do that. If there's another type of vulnerability activity you want to propose, rock on, let's do it. All the activities are in GitHub, so I can give anybody who wants to contribute GitHub access, and you can go through and start doing these activities. I'm especially interested in getting activities that are lower level, beginner level activities. So if you've never done mobile development before, never had the opportunity to work in mobile security, that's awesome. You can still go through, especially over winter break, and create an activity or two. One of my main goals for this set of activities is to make them available to institutions, so high schools, middle schools, universities that wouldn't necessarily have the resources to create these modules for their courses. And since it is publicly available to everybody and it uses entirely free software, they can go through and add these activities in their courses. If they're doing an outreach event, like the one we did for Wake the other night, they could pick up one of these modules and use that module in their activity. Okay? So I am looking for folks to get involved. So if you go to this website, teachingmobilesecurity.com, or if you want to bring up the previous slide, it has my email address on there. So all you need to do is shoot me an email, stop by. This is something, like I said, anybody can contribute to. I'm looking for people to contribute to this. I'm looking for volunteer developers to go through and create these activities. One of the things I think would be really helpful is for folks to go through and actually do these activities and really refine them. The developer I had to create these is really, really, really bright. He's an awesome guy, but English I think is like his fourth language. And I think you'll see that when you read the modules. So even if you go through and clean up the English, if you clean up the grammar, make the instructions more intuitive, that would be a huge benefit for the project. Okay. So any questions I can answer for this right now? So please go through the site. If you have some time, go through and do a couple of the activities. Send me all the feedback you'd like, and I'd really appreciate it. Okay. All right, so thank you, everybody, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So just to reiterate what he said, and we had conversations earlier this week, is that you don't need to be an expert at all this. If you're interested in security, he's willing to help you and guide you through making your own modules. So this is stuff you want to get into after, you know, RC3 has gone through its thing and Android's really cool and interesting to you. This is kind of something that you can take the extra step and put your name on it and show companies that. So really good stuff to get involved with.
And on the website, anybody who contributes, creates activities, I will put your name up on the website. Like I said, the goal of this project is to help people, especially groups that are underrepresented groups, and to help folks that might not necessarily be exposed to this material have access to free quality material like this. So,
All right. News for this week. So, a cyber attack that uses the Mariah botnet took 900,000 routers offline in Germany. So it's kind of really interesting. It uses this Mariah botnet is really becoming a really big problem. Now this malware is like open source, and anyone can go on GitHub and grab it. I forked it to my own GitHub repo just to have it. So it's just kind of cool to see what people are doing with it and going above and beyond, and at the same time they're being malicious with it. So it's something to be aware of, that this IoT and these devices that we use every day in our lives, such as routers, are insecure and they're being used against us. So the way that this worked is it modified some of the Mariah code, and it was able to connect to this port on routers, 7547, which is a management port used by ISPs, so they could connect to it, and then they were able to run remote commands on the actual router. And once they actually had actual access to the router and all that, they just shut down 7547 so that their ISP couldn't log in and kick you out. So that's kind of interesting, kind of fun to play with, but yeah, so something to be aware of. So this story made me laugh when I read it. So San Francisco Rail system was hacked, but then the hacker himself was actually hacked. Really funny. So when they came in the morning, they had this message saying, "You have been hacked. Contact me at this email address." So of course, this is a big problem and everything, because it was encrypted, and he asked for 100 Bitcoins, which is close to $73,000 or $83,000. And, you know, he's asking for a certain amount of money, but he's, you know, trying to ransom them. And one of the security researchers found out about this, and he went, "Let me look into this guy a little bit." So he found out the guy's email account, which is, so this was the email account used that you had to contact him to get the decryption key to unlock everything. And it's, so there's a screenshot of the user's profile page for that, and showed a backup email for this. So once he had initial access to this email, he found out that there was this backup email, and the way that he got into this email was the same way he got into this email, because he used the same security question, which was really easy for this one. He used the exact same one for this one. So this hacker used perfect security, right? So he's just doing it all really, really well. And then, where was it? And then they found some interesting things in emails and conversations within the email, which led them to the C2 server, where he launched his attack, and they got into the box, and they were able to figure out at least a username, which is this one right here, and they believe that could be his actual name, but they're not really sure. But yeah, they believe that to be his name or username. So then they found this phone number, which is a registered phone number in Russia. So this is kind of interesting. So it's a really good news article if you want to go through and look at it and read it yourself and get more into it. So, so the FBI was kind of kind to us to tell us that we should all change our passwords for the holiday season. So this article is a little bit more of a controversial thing, and I like to bring up these things because every once in a while it's good to bring up these controversial articles about certain things like this. So this, the FBI says that you should change your password, but there's also a thought about changing your password too often can actually hurt you. And the reason is that it can hurt you is that if you're changing your password so often, you're going to make a weaker password. So you could have a 25-character password that you use for a year, but if you're changing it every 2 to 3 months, you're going to use probably an 8-character password. So you're using less security because you have to change it all the time. So that's the thought, is that, you know, this advice that they're giving may or may not be the best advice. So things like password managers are probably the best thing to use because they allow you to generate 25 randomly unique passwords and stuff like that. So you don't really have to change the passwords all that often. So just something to kind of keep in mind, that this is something that we have to fight about in industry, is how often do we want to rotate through passwords? Do we want to set a 25-character limit and then just never change the password? Do we want to change it every, you know, year and a half like our IT makes you do? So these are things to kind of consider as you're moving into industry. So they said to change your passwords frequently. So that was the advice that they given, but as security researchers have found that when you change your password frequently, you may use more weaker passwords. So hacking for defense was something that Bo talked about a couple weeks ago. So it's an opportunity in the spring for students who are interested. It's an independent study course. So you get to work in a team and work on really cool projects for the government. So if that's something you're really interested to, there's a web link there that talks about it, and you can talk to Bo. So here is the RC3 2017 tentative spring outline / curriculum. So at RC3, if this is your first year here, we've always kind of done fall, and then spring's kind of the same thing of fall, but we go in a lot deeper. But we thought, well, let's change it up. Let's do some new things. Let's spice it up. Let's try some new things. So we thought, hey, so we want to do some Wi-Fi networks. So show you guys how to secure Wi-Fi networks, how to break WEP, why is WEP broken, and the security that goes into WPA and WPA2. Also, we have the ability to build a cell tower. So we're going to do that, and you guys are going to be able to connect to our cell tower with your cell phones, register phone numbers, and send text messages to each other on our secret cell tower network. So that'll be a lot of fun. We're going to do incident response to get you guys ready for IRSEC. So we're going to be like doing a 2-week rotation to make sure that you guys understand, like the back of your hand, how to do incident response, how to do it effectively, how to set up systems so that you can respond effectively in the system and to a response. And then we're going to do some red teaming / pen testing. So we're going to set up an infrastructure and have you guys do some red teaming and pen testing. This is going to be a 2-week thing. So you're going to use social engineering techniques. You're going to use red team techniques. You're going to try and pivot through the network. And it's going to be a lot of fun. This is actually, we're actually hoping to do this one in AWS so that we have an infrastructure that's actually up for 2 whole weeks that you guys can connect to whenever you want and do it. And then we're going to be doing advanced Windows and Linux / Linux hardening for you guys to get you guys ready for IRSEC. So we'll be going into Windows offense and defense again, and same thing with Linux. And then we're going to do some secure coding. So we're going to show you some tactics of how people create coding or do coding that's bad practices, and show you why they're bad, and then show you how to fix those, how to find them, and stuff like that. And then continuing on, we thought we'd do some things. So we're going to do some intro to malware analysis. So you guys are going to be able to take some malware samples, analyze, try and figure out what it does, and then we're going to do a little bit of malware development. So you guys kind of figure out both sides of malware, how to analyze it, and then how to make some of it your own. We're going to be doing that on the Windows, so you're going to be able to play with the Windows API a little bit. And then we want to do networking, so we're going to do some things with Cisco, so Cisco devices, so you guys understand how to configure your Cisco router, so you guys are ready for IRSEC. And wireless APs and the switches for Cisco. Maybe do some IoT in there, and show you guys how to use IP tables, which is fundamentally crucial and really important. And then we hope to do some advanced web and mobile. So that's kind of the outline for 2017, and we're kind of excited to see how it goes because we've never done any of this before, so hoping that it's going to be a really good turnout. So because of the nature of what we want to do next semester, eBoard is opening up an A-board position called the Junior Tech Lead. So basically what the Junior Tech Lead's responsibilities include is assisting the RC3 eBoard tech lead with RC3 demos and events. So you're going to be helping the RC3 tech lead with all the demos that we create on a weekly basis and any events we may have. Assisting the vice president and president with presentations each week and assisting eBoard during demos. Disclaimer, we just want to let you know that for this position, you will not be able to receive points and prizes for weekly challenges because you will be helping us make the weekly challenges. However, you can compete in competitions for prizes. So that's the one thing, is that you can compete in competitions for prizes. One benefit is you get to utilize RC3 resources and funds with the approval of eBoard. So this is a really great position if you're thinking about running for tech lead and you want to know what it's like to actually step in the shoes of a tech lead. You get to try it out. So up there at the top is a Google link form for nominations. So basically, if you go to that link, you can nominate someone else or you can nominate yourself. So on to the next thing. So this gets really fun, how we're going to have to do this position. So basically, RC3 eBoard made an amendment to the Constitution where we added the following amendment to add an article for suspension of bylaws. So we added this, so I'm going to go to this in the Constitution real quick and show you guys what the amendment we added. This is really important because we need to make a vote, and we need this amendment to do it. So once it loads. Come on, internet, do your thing.
You have it open in another tab.
Oh, that works. I know what you're saying. All right. So basically, this is the new article that we have amended to the Constitution. It says any club member can motion to suspend the bylaws within the RC3 Constitution with approval from RC3 eBoard. RC3 eBoard will vote on whether to permit the members' proposed motions that require suspension of the bylaws. Upon approval of said motions, the vote must reach 75% approval of present club members for the motion to pass. So, if eBoard vetoes your proposed motion, you can go through this process where you can talk to club advisors, say, hey, fuck RC3 eBoard, I don't like their decision, and the RC3 club advisors can override eBoard's decision. So that's the process down here. So, how does this all play in? What are you trying to tell us, Ben? All right, so basically what it comes down to is, so for the A-board positions, for election procedures, what happens is we open up a position and then we have people nominate themselves and the nominees come up, they give a quick speech, and then the club votes on it. So unfortunately, since we've got 2 weeks left of the semester, that's going to be really hard. And because we want to do a junior tech lead position, and that requires a lot of technical knowledge, RC3 eBoard would like you guys to allow RC3 eBoard to do the proceedings for how we would elect the tech lead for RC3 eBoard. So how does that happen? So for those of you who don't know, for RC3 tech lead, what happens is you get nominated, and then you go through an interview process, and we sit down with you, figure out what your technical skills are, and then RC3 eBoard comes together and goes, who do we think is the best candidate, and then we choose. So basically what this is saying is, we want to suspend the bylaw saying that the club votes for the junior tech lead position, so that eBoard can go through the process of how we would do it for tech lead. So we have a vote form for you guys to fill out. So basically what this comes down to is we need to suspend the bylaws so that we can elect the junior tech lead as we would for elections for eBoard for the RC3 tech lead. So if you go to this link right here on your laptop, you can click yes or no whether you will veto your vote and pass it on to eBoard. So need you all to go ahead and do that real quick. We'll take a couple minutes if you all could do that. The presentation's up on the website, so if you all could do that, that'd be great. So that was kind of the thing. We didn't think about this ahead of time. Well, we didn't think about it when we made the Constitution that we may come to a crossroads where we have a special case where we may want to elect an A board position by going through the tech lead process. So that was something we didn't really think about, so that's why we had to go through this type of process. It suspends the bylaws for the motion. So for this motion right here, that's all it does. All this suspends for this motion right here.
So if I can get the members of the CSH CTF team to come down, we have prizes and stuff for you to fill out. If you're here.
Anyone still voting?
How do we raise our hands?
We could do that. I mean, all right. So in our Constitution says we can vote by division, which means we can do hand raising. All right. So we're going to do vote by division, which is where you just raise your hand. So if you're in agreement, raise your hand. If you're opposed, raise your hand. All right. All right. We got one opposed. So all right. Perfect. Works for me. Thank you for making our lives easier. So basically what's going to happen is nomination. So if you want to be the junior tech lead, go to that link, put your name in. If you think someone else in the club would be a good junior tech lead, you can also put their name in as well. And then over winter break, we're going to be doing interviews. All right, so RC3 board meeting, we had one yesterday, so we did like a lessons learned / post-mortem of the RC3 fall CTF so that we can give you guys a better CTF next year. So we thought that it went pretty well for an international CTF, but we had some hiccups, but we discussed it, we documented it, and moved forward. So we discussed the junior tech lead position, we discussed spring 2017, the tentative outline, which I showed you guys, and then starting to plan for IRSEC in the spring of 2017. So really exciting things. So for those of you who haven't seen on Facebook, I tried to blast it out as much as I could, is next week we are having a Festivus party. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So the Festivus party is going to be between RC3, Sparso, WIC, CSC, Next Hop. So a lot of the big clubs here in Jesus are all going to be here in this room from 12 till 4. And we're going to be doing Christmas trivia game, a bad sweater contest, which you can all try and beat me, but I'm going to win. So try and take me on. And we're going to be watching movies, and we're just having good times with some good friends, and hopefully make some new friends. And the Galisano will be providing pizza and drinks for everyone. So, all right. Ready, Joel? Yeah.
This week is Intro to Android. So don't forget to pre-order your Google Brains. They'll do all the thinking for you, handle your whole life. So I'm Joel. I'm a first-year CSEC major. I'm that guy who thinks that really awesome choice to news. I've been doing Android hacking for about 3 years now. Most of the popular social network apps that you've used, I probably reversed them. Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Kik. My Tinder is Bootylicious Joel. Hit me up. Talking about Android is, you want to kind of understand it from a baseline aspect. So, in terms of what it actually is, it's a mobile operating system. There's three main mobile operating systems. You have Windows Phone, iOS, and Android. And Android is the one we're going to talk about today, obviously. Android runs on a lot of different platforms. It runs on TVs, it runs on cars, it runs on watches. Unlike iOS, which they have separate versions of OSs for everything. Whereas, like an Android Wear watch can actually run APKs that your phone can run. So, what is Android? Well, Android is, again, a mobile operating system. It's been developed by Google. It runs on the Linux kernel. It's designed for devices with touch screens, so like watches, TVs. Well, that's a fancy TV, but your phone, that kind of stuff. And it's really designed to be interactive with like the user. So really like finger on the screen, like interactive. You're moving stuff around. You're pinching, dragging, all that kind of stuff. It works on TVs, cars, wristwatches. It's on consoles, all sorts of stuff. It's everywhere. So, although Android runs on Linux, it is not Linux. All Linux systems are going to run on the Linux kernel, and the Linux kernel is like lowest level theoretically, besides like hardware. And so Android runs a modified version of the Linux kernel. Before Android version 4.4, which was KitKat, it would use what's known as the Dalvik VM. And so like Java has a JVM to run jars, it interprets everything and converts it into assembly code from Java bytecode. Android had a Dalvik VM that did the same thing because apps on Android are written in Java. Now it uses what's known as ART, which is the Android runtime. It has a lot of improvements over Dalvik. It has better garbage collection. It compiles things ahead of time so they run faster. You can debug things easier. And so basically your apps are going to talk to frameworks to the libraries for the runtime, and the libraries and runtime are going to talk to your kernel that's modified for Android. So, rooting Android. If you have an Android phone, you might have either done this or you know what it is. But basically, Android, because it runs Linux, it has a shell for your baseline unprivileged user, but it also has root user too. So you can get root access on a phone, but it's locked down by the bootloader and have all these sorts of limitations that are going to be put in place so that the phone just can't be exploited. So when you root your Android device, it's going to give you access to parts of the file system that are going to need elevated access, and I'm going to go over a couple of those paths in the next slide. But basically, your bootloader protects everything. It's the first thing that's loaded when your phone launches, and you can flash things once you've unlocked it, which means you take like a zip file. It's been constructed in a specific way so that it has like metadata information and all that stuff about the files that are going to be installed, and it lets you install things like ROMs or super user on your phone. And ROMs are like themes, so they're better. It's like an entire different OS, but it's still Android. It's still based on Android. It's mostly usually like visual modifications, where it's going to have an entire different like modifications that can run on like a very low level. Just more different. So the file system in Android, like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot like the Linux file system. It's got a lot of common paths. It has proc file system, map, lib, dev. It has root. So the path root actually exists just by default, even on an Android device, even if it's not rooted. So inside I have data, which is only accessible if you have root. You can find a lot of important information specific to apps. So, for instance, in this picture, Snapchat, if you were to go into Snapchat state folder, you can see there's a folder for files, you have shared preferences, libraries, all that stuff that Snapchat itself stores specifically to the user. It's going to be stored in there. So, like Linux, Android also has services. It has system services, stuff that can be scheduled like tasks on Windows. You can start services in the background. You can bind services to be interactive with event handlers, stuff like that. If you've ever used LastPass on Android, it uses services to know when you're typing in a password field. So some of the common services that you're going to have running on your phone, a lot of them have to do with like receiving text, receiving calls, connecting to Wi-Fi, plugging into like a computer. So USB manager, Wi-Fi manager, text services manager, that stuff is going to be dealing with SMS. Telecom manager, when you get a phone call. Window manager is going to keep track of what apps you have open, what the current view is, what you're seeing on your phone. Accessibility manager, if you're like typing something in or you need something read to you, if you're like have bad eyesight or something, that has to do with that. LastPass also uses accessibility manager. So if you ever used it, obviously you have to go to accessibility and you have to enable it as an accessibility service, and that's how it actually hooks in and knows when you're typing in a password field or something. So storing data on Android, like I mentioned earlier in data, there's two main methods of storing data specific to a user or making persistent data saved on the device. You have XML and SQLite, and so XML is plain text, it's easy to read. You can just open it in a text editor, you can read it without any special tools or anything. It's pretty simple, it's just key value pairs. SQLite is more complicated. It uses a database, well, it is a database, and so you need either a client or a connector to actually talk to it, read to it, write to it. It has tables with columns and rows, and it's a more complex data structure, and it's sort of binary format instead of just plain text. So all apps on Android are .apk files. iOS uses .ipa, and so inside of an APK file, it's really just a zip file. If you look at the header, it's the same thing. You can extract it. You can just change the extension to a .zip and open it and extract it out. But the common files you're going to find in there are going to be Android manifest.xml. That'll have a lot of important information about the app itself. So when you launch the app, how does it know what thing to show to you first? What things like services have to be declared in there? Strings, the app name, so what it shows in your launcher, icons, stuff like that. Classes.dex. So .dex is a Dalvik executable, and so basically it's the compiled Android bytecode of the app. These can be these can be reversed into jar files, but that requires some extra effort. Metainf is a folder that's going to contain a lot of metadata about the application, the class files, all that stuff. Res is going to contain a whole bunch of folders that'll have layouts. Layouts are like just the views themselves, so how things are displayed on Android. Strings are stored in XML. Values, language packs, all that stuff is all going to be in res. Resources.arc is going to be a compiled file that's going to contain all the resources that the app is going to use. So it's not going to store everything in plain text, it's going to compile it into this compactor file, and it's just going to read it from there. And then sometimes you'll find a folder called lib, and that'll have split out into architectures, native libraries that are written in C or C++ for faster execution, or if you need something more lower level than what Java can handle, those will be used in native libraries. So I mentioned that you can actually extract APKs that basically just zip files. But if you were to extract an APK just by itself, you would come across the fact that if you tried to read like the XML files, they're actually they're binaries, so you wouldn't be able to read it in plain text quite yet. There is a tool called APKtool. It's very helpful. You can basically just run it on an app, APK like this, and it will extract all the resources. It'll decompile them, it'll turn them into plain text. It'll extract the app out into a folder, and then you can kind of go from there and you can browse into it. Logcat is part of ADB. I'm going to cover ADB later on, but it's basically like syslog on Android. So if you type ADB logcat while your device is connected and you've got debugging enabled, you can just watch the system log. If an app crashes, it would output in there. You can see it's classified. So W is warning, I is information, D is debug, stuff like that. So it's really helpful if you're trying to like debug issues with your Android apps. You can see where it's crashing, that kind of stuff. So there are some common security app flaws that you're going to come across in apps and when you're writing apps or auditing apps. So the first is that Android can be decompiled back to Java code. So you can take a compiled APK, you can turn it into a jar file, you can decompile the jar file, and you can get a Java source for the app that you're looking at. So that means that any kind of custom encryption, any kind of code that's trying to obfuscate what's actually going on, can be extracted theoretically. And so that also means that because you can just install apps and you can get them from the Play Store, but you can also just install an APK by itself. So third-party apps, that's why like these banking fraud apps and stuff are being spread around and stuff, because they can be installed on Android just out of the box, whereas on iOS or something, you'd have to actually get it approved by the App Store, you'd have to be jailbroken. And then oftentimes you'll see an application like that's meant to just, I don't know, take a picture or something, and it'll be requesting for permissions to like read your text messages and stuff, and you'll be like, why do you need my text messages? And then you just click accept anyways. Yeah, that's pretty common. You'll see like malicious apps are requesting way too many permissions, but nobody actually reads what they're asking for, so they just install it anyways. So yeah, those are kind of the main vulnerabilities that you're gonna find within apps. The Android SDK is basically what's used to write applications. So it's all open source. It runs on Linux, Windows, Mac OS. It's designed off of IntelliJ's IDEA, if you ever used that. It used to be based off Eclipse, but Eclipse is kind of shitty, so. Yeah, so it has the Android emulator built in. It manages all your packages for Android. You can install versions back to like Android 2 and emulate them and all that. It has like an easy way to design UIs, so it has a visual way, so you can kind of just drag and drop elements and design it from a visual standpoint instead of trying to write the XML yourself. So Android Studio and the SDK are really, really helpful. And going into that even more, you can kind of see here in this image, this is that visual display like design aspect of it. So you have a view here, and you have all the different types of things that you can add into it, and you can just drag them in, and you can change their IDs and all that kind of stuff. And then it's based off ideas, so you have code suggestions, IntelliSense-esque type things if you've used like Visual Studio, that kind of stuff. It's all right there. It's really easy to use. It's clean. It just works. And then the Android emulator, so you can write code, you can write an app, but if you don't have an Android device or you don't want to put it on your personal device, you can use the Android emulator, which is a full version of Android. It's not like the iOS simulator on Xcode. It's actually full Android. You could use this as like a phone if you wanted to, if you could figure out how to get like a SIM card in there. But yeah, so you can just automatically run your code and deploy it to an emulator, and it'll run on there, and you can test things like is what's shown here. So in addition to that, you can use Burp Suite, you can use web proxies, that kind of stuff, to actually proxy traffic that's coming from the app. This is really helpful when you're reverse engineering things. I do this all the time. You'll just throw an app onto an emulator, or you'll load it on your phone, and then you'll proxy through Burp or something, and you'll watch the request, you'll see what's happening. You'll try to understand it, and then if they're starting to do things like custom encryption and that kind of stuff, that's when you'll kind of go and you'll pull apart the app and you'll see what's in there. In addition, you have a terminal inside of Android Studio, so you can actually run things. You can do a shell from ADB. You can list all the devices that are connected. ADB is just like a super useful tool, and it's installed in the path by Android Studio. So then, this was kind of covered earlier, but Burp, you can just basically configure it to go like that. You can tell the emulator for Android that you just want to proxy through your local proxy, and it'll do it, and it doesn't really care. So yeah, ADB, I brought this up earlier, with Logcat. Basically, it's a debugging bridge for Android. So you can type ADB devices, you can see what's connected. ADB Logcat, that's like your syslog. You can push and pull files to and from your device. You can get a shell access. So it's really great for like figuring out what the fuck is wrong with your app, but it also makes you very vulnerable to things. So you could just plug your phone into a computer, and you could type ADB shell, and you have a shell on your phone. You don't have to unlock it. It's all right there. You can pull data from it. Especially if you're rooted, it's pretty dangerous, because if you've already granted access to ADB to have sudo access, you can just get a shell, type sudo, you're in, no authentication. You can pull any files you want. You can pull passcode from the device. You can decrypt it and get into the device legitimately. So ADB is really powerful, but also very dangerous. Yeah, so just a couple quick things at the end, just resources. There's a link here. This is going to go to Google's page about developing Android apps. They have really good documentation about all this stuff because they made Android. And teaching about security from the professor from earlier, that's a really great site. It has a lot of good, useful stuff in there. So I definitely recommend checking out both of these, especially if you're interested in Android or just in general. It's really good to kind of just wrap your mind around what's going on your phone. Yeah, so questions? Any? Yeah, that's Android. Basically, in a nutshell.
So,
More like in an ADV show.
get out. He should make a meme for that. Alright. So, if you haven't done so already, come up and get your prizes. But if no one has any questions, we're going to go upstairs and get started on this week's demo.